Guys, this is Mr. Finkelstein. We're going to go through the very first project, which is to open a document in Illustrator and then create an abstract design using the line tool, the shape tools, and the pen and curvature tools, as well as using the fill and stroke color options. So the first thing that we're going to do, assuming that you have Creative Cloud downloaded and that you have Illustrator installed, is to open Illustrator. You can do that by going up here to the Creative Cloud icon and then going to All Apps. You should have all your apps listed here, and then you're just going to open Illustrator. I already have it. I like to save it down here on my little toolbar down here or app bar down here, and so I can just open it from there. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to click on the icon. And you can see it jumping up and down. That means it's getting excited, getting ready to open. Takes just a minute to open up here. All right, and then you get to the welcome menu. And so there's lots of things here. It might show you some of the recent documents that you've worked on. Might show you some, gives you a shortcut to go to some presets. We want to create a new document or a new artboard. New document, and we want to make it 8.5 by 11 inches. So you might have this set to picas or points. It might be set to something else. Make sure that it's set to inches and that you select 8.5 by 11. I have it listed over here because I've created an 8.5 by 11 document in the past, and so it's listed here as an item that I've made before. The bleed should all be at 0 here. That is the border. You want your border at 0. The bleed means that how close it goes to the edge of the paper. Full bleed would be no borders, which is what we have it set to, and that way it would print to the very edge of the paper if your printer allowed you to do that. All of these other modes down here, we want to use CMYK. We want to have the raster effect set to 300 pixels per inch. That's the high resolution because we are going to print these out, or we want to pretend that we're going to print them out. And preview mode, we want default. So all of that stuff should be set, just 8.5 by 11, and then we're going to hit create. And that makes our artboard. Now, if you decide that you want to change something about your artboard, you can go to Document Setup and then Edit Artboards. And you can actually change some of the, up here you can see 8.5 by 11. I could change any of that stuff. I don't want to, but if you find yourself needing to make some changes after you've created the artboard, you can go and then, like, these are presets. Tabloid is 11 by 17. You know, there's different presets that you can use. Okay, so that's just so you know that you can do that. And to get out of that, there may be another way, but I just hit this selection tool, and that takes me out of the Edit Artboard mode. All right, so what we want to do is we're going to make some designs using this line tool, the line segment tool, which has some different things that you can do, arcs and spirals and different things like that. So play with those, but we're going to start with the line tool. We're also going to use this shape tool that right now it's at the rectangle, and just click and hold on those tools and you'll get this drop-down menu, and you can see other tools that are embedded underneath there. So this is how we might make different kinds of shapes. Ellipse would be a circle, and then polygon, star, I have other kinds of things. Again, play with those things and see what you can come up with. All right, and then the other tools that we're going to use are the pen tool and also the curvature tool. The pen tool has some other things. We're probably not going to concern ourselves with those. We're just going to really use the pen tool. Okay, another thing I want to show you is that you're going to be working in layers. If you're familiar with Photoshop, Photoshop also works in layers. And what's great about layers is that you can put different objects on different layers, and that way you can edit those objects independently of the other objects. So I can edit one thing without having to edit the other things. And I can also turn my layers on and off, and I'll show you that. There's a button over here that looks like some diamonds on top of one another, and that's your layers panel. So we want to open that. Right now we've just got one layer and there's nothing on it. Each of the shapes that you create, I want you to create on a separate layer. And that way you can edit those things. And we can also make those things interact with one another in different ways. And that'll become clear as we go here. So I want my layer 1. I'm going to double click where it says layer 1. Just double click that. And I'm going to make that my background. It's nice. I think it's a good habit to get into to name your layers. Because if you end up having 10, 15, 25 or more layers, you don't want them to all just be a bunch of numbers and letters. You want to know what's on each layer. It makes your life a lot easier. Okay, so we're going to create a new layer. I'm going to go down here to this plus, create new layer. You can see my new layer. It just is called layer 2. And again, you don't want to have layer 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It gets really confusing. So before I name it, I'm going to make something. Let's go over to this line segment tool. So the line segment tool allows me to just make one line at a time. When I click, it's going to ask me what length I want the line to be. If you wanted to, you could change the angle of this, and if you knew, like say there was a specific angle that you needed and a specific length, you could type that in and it would just make that. I usually just leave it wherever it is and say okay, and then I can just come in here and I can move. I can still elongate the line. I can move it around. Do whatever I need to do. Now, notice there it says negative 6.25 is the degree of the angle. If I want to make sure that that's at 0 degrees, if I hit Shift, then it'll pop back to 0 degrees, which is kind of handy if you're trying to make a perfectly straight horizontal line. All right, let's make another one. I'm just going to do another line, and each time it's going to ask me, what I want to do, and I'm just going to make a line and then adjust it from there. I'm going to snap it, and then again, Shift makes it go perfectly vertical. All right, I'm just going to make a bunch of lines here, just clicking and then saying OK, click, OK, click, OK. Now, if I want to move these lines around, I'm going to go over here to the selection tool, and I can move them up and down. I'm going to make kind of a pattern here. What we're doing here is basic drawing with lines and shapes, but I also want you to keep in mind aesthetics. So I want you to create patterns and create an interesting design using these very basic elements of line and shape. All right, so I'm just kind of playing around here. All right, I think I'll make that a little bit longer. All right, so just play, come up with some kind of shape or some kind of design using lines. You can also use the arrow keys. I'm using the arrow key to make very small adjustments. I can also zoom in by hitting Command plus, and that way I can see that this is actually not quite touching, and I might use my arrow key to make sure that that's exactly where I want it. Okay, to zoom back out, Command 0 will place the artboard back in my window, the size as big as it will fit into the window that I have. All right, so that's the line tool. The next thing we're going to play with is the shape tool. Oh, I forgot to name my layer. Let's call this lines. All right. Next, I'm going to make a shape, but I want to make a new layer first because each thing is going to be on a different layer. So create a new layer, and I'm going to make a square. Actually, I'm going to make a large square because I might make a small one too. And then I'm going to click my rectangle tool. I'm going to click and drag. That little pink line is a guideline that tells me that that is square. So that's kind of handy. All right, so I've made a square. I think I'll make another one. I'm going to do another layer. And this time I'm going to make a small square. That's not how you spell square. All right, there we go. And I'm just going to click and drag and make a smaller square. Okay, let's make a circle. I want to click here, click and hold, get my ellipse tool, and now when I click and drag, see those guidelines are telling me when it's perfectly when it's a perfect circle as opposed to an ellipse. So I can drag this around. I can make ovals, whatever I want to do. I'm going to make kind of an oval there. Oops, I forgot to make a new layer. So what do? I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm going to go back to this small square layer. I've got this selected. I'm going to cut it. Command X is cut. Go to this layer. Command V is paste. and now I've got this on a separate layer. And see, I can turn all these layers on and off. You can see how that would be really useful. All right, so now I'm here. I'm going to make this my small oval. Okay, so that's shapes. And again, you can use the selection tool up here to select an object and move it, and move it around. I have to click right on the path there and move it around. Oh, there, okay. I had to grab it right on the edge there. So I can move these things around, I can overlap them, you know, whatever I want to do. All right, let's move on to the pen tool. So the pen tool, when I click, it just makes a line. I can see where that line is going to go. I click and it makes an anchor point. And I can move this around and make irregular shapes this way. So with the shape tool, you can make regular shapes, geometric shapes like squares, polygons, all different kinds of stuff like that. With the pen tool, you can use that to make irregular shapes. All right, let's make another one. Okay, again, I forgot to put those on different layers, so I can just make a new layer. I need to go back to where this object is, cut it, Command X, paste it into a new layer, and there we go. Oops, I accidentally only grabbed a little bit of it. All right, and so this is my strange shape 1. All right, and again, that's on a new layer. All right, those two things, the small square and that other weird shape that I made, those are on the same layer. If I want to edit those independently, you still can, but I might, I might have to do a little something different. It's not as easy to edit them independently. And I can't make them overlap one another as much, I don't think. Well, yes, I can. Okay. All right, last thing is I want to show you the curvature tool. So when you click on the curvature tool, it works a lot like the pen tool, looks like the pen tool. I make an anchor point. You don't see anything until you make another anchor point. I'm going to make an anchor point there. And then as I move this around, you can see how it's creating a curve. So this one really takes some getting used to, I think. It really does take some getting used to figure out, how this draws. It doesn't just draw like a pencil. However, and when you get back to where you first made your anchor, it will close the shape for you. Let's say you are making a shape like this, you make a curve, and you don't want to make a closed shape, you can hit Command, and click, and it will stop making the shape. So Command, click, and you can you don't have to make a closed shape. All right, now I've got all these different crazy shapes on here. I was also going to show you how if I can make anchor points. So let's say I want this to be a little more curved. I can make an anchor point just by clicking and then pop that out a little bit. So you're not just stuck with whatever shape you make. You can adjust it by creating anchor points and then playing with those. So you can do stuff with your shapes that way. Okay, so that's enough of that. All right, now I have all these shapes. I'm going to put that on a new layer. Large curved shape. Whoops. Okay, there it is. All right, so now I've got pretty much all these shapes are on their own layer. All right, so now what? Now I'm going to play around with coloring. This is kind of a hodgepodge, a little bit of a mess. So maybe I want to just play with the shape that I'm on. And so this is where having everything on a different layer can get really handy. Because I can just turn everything off and focus on just that one shape that I have. All right, I want you to play around with some colors. We've got some color options over here and also up here. You can do your coloring. I've got my fill shape, which is going to be the one that's in this top one here is the fill shape, or fill. You can see right there it says fill or stroke. Fill is the color inside the shape. Stroke is the outline. So right now the stroke is invisible. There is no outline. If I wanted to make an outline, then I could double click on that, choose a color, and now I would have a red outline, which you can barely even see. It's really, really small. If we zoom in there, then you can see it, okay? I can also make my stroke larger. Let's say I want to make sure that I can really see that red. I can make that much bigger. I don't really like that. I'm going to make it, in fact, I think I'm going to have an invisible. That's none. Okay. All right, so that's black. I don't really like that black color. I'm going to double click that. I want to make that more of a kind of a light green color. Okay, so now I've got that. All right, so let's do that with a couple of other shapes. I have to have it selected. Make it that purple. All right, let's do that one. Again, you have to select the object before you can change the color. If nothing's happening, like if you're clicking on fill or clicking on the stroke to change the color and nothing's happening, it's because you don't have the object, you don't have the shape actually selected. So I'm just kind of choosing random colors here. It doesn't matter that much for my demo. I actually would like you to kind of pay attention to color scheme and things like that. Okay, so now that I have all these things different colors, these layers are all on top of one another. So layer 5, the circle here, is on top of this strange shape, which is on top of this large curve. So what I want to do is try to blend these together. First of all, if I wanted to, well, the circle is on top right now. I could move the large curve, so it's on top. And when I put that on top, see, it covers up the things underneath there. So you can play around with that a little bit and putting things, playing around with the order of things. All right. And then the last thing I want to show you is opacity. So I want to blend some of these colors together. Up here, the opacity is like right now it's opaque. It's 100% opacity. But I'm going to change that to about 50% opacity. And see, now I can see through that circle, and it's combining the blue color with the purple and green of the shapes underneath it. So I'm starting to get some interesting things going on. Again, when I click on that object, it automatically puts me on that layer. And then I can change the opacity of that as well. You can also, I'm clicking, but you can also slide this. Okay, and just kind of play around with it until you get it where you like it. All right, and so I've got all these other shapes on here. I think I'm going to make that more transparent as well. I want to be able to see through all of these things. Okay, so that's all the different tools that you're going to be using, and I just want you to play. There's nothing specific that I want you to make other than just an abstract design. Think about pattern. Think about color and color schemes. Interesting, a variety of shapes. All the different elements and principles that you should have been learning, since kindergarten. And I know they taught an intro and probably taught in your middle school art classes. So think about all of those things. Try to maybe keep a color scheme. I have kind of a cool color scheme going on here, I guess. And that's it. That's it. Just play around with those different tools. Try to make an interesting design, an interestingly designed composition, and that's going to get us started using Illustrator. All right, have fun. Don't forget to ask me questions if you have them, and I can't wait to see what you guys make. All right, thanks.